Hey y'all, it's me. I'm Cece. I hope you're all having such a lovely day today. I am here to talk about books because, well, I'm me. I've got them all piled next to me. Total, it is more than 50 books. If you are a regular of this channel, then this list is probably not going to surprise you. It's going to include a whole lot of horror and a whole lot of queer lit. If you're new here, welcome. This list is going to include a whole lot of horror and a whole lot of queer lit. Real quick before we get into the books, I want to give another shout out to a podcast, Book Lounge by Libby. It is the official podcast that Libby does, full of author interviews and discussions and so many book recommendations. You can listen to Book Lounge anywhere where you get podcasts. And if you happen to want to see our beautiful faces, there's also a video version on the Libby YouTube channel, which will all be linked down in the description below. I just wanted to shout it out because I was recording an episode from season 2 earlier today, and it was just making me so happy again to be able to talk to Joe and to Mira. Today we were recording the new sci-fi episode, which should already be available. You should already be able to listen to it or watch it. There's a whole bunch of other episodes, check it out, but without further ado, let's get into this enormous stack of books that you can't quite see. I went on kind of a used book buying spree near the beginning of the year, and part of that was because I wanted to be able to get physical copies of some of the books that I read last year digitally and absolutely loved. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 books that I read last year. All 8 of these I should have mini reviews of on my channel. They should be in a couple of different wrap-ups, so those will all be linked down in the description below. There are places where you can hear me talk about these. There is one book in this stack that is not horror. Second Chances in Newport Stephen by TJ Alexander. It's a second chance romance about 2 people who dated in high school and they haven't seen each other since, and since then one of them has transitioned. It made me laugh out loud. It's delightful. TJ Alexander continues to delight me with queer romances. Other than that, we have a few different things like Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin. I have had a lot of Samantha's work on my TBR for years, and I think I just found this as like an add-on on Book Outlet or something. Fever Dream is an accurate description of what reading this book is like. Surreal, weird, literary eco-horror, maybe? It's less horror and more on the literary side, but it is a completely unique experience. You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. This is by Kaylin Bayron. This is a slasher with a black queer lead. It is set at a summer camp that's also like a horror simulation camp, so people go there to LARP or role play being in a slasher when real murder starts to happen. And it is so speedy, so you can read it like that. I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. Stephen Graham Jones is a fave of mine. This is a phenomenal bit of meta horror about someone who is basically infected to become a teenage slasher. It's almost like a disease. It is a fascinating book. It is so unique. One of the books that got me back into a reading mindset last year was From Below by Darcy Coates. I am glad that I read this digitally because I had no concept of how thick it was. This doesn't look that thick, but for like a commercial horror novel, it's like 500 something pages, and I really don't know that I would have picked this up if I had known that, but I'm really glad I did because this book scared the shit out of me and made me so anxious, I cannot even tell you. The claustrophobia of being in a dive suit in a haunted ship, like I think I almost had an anxiety attack reading this book, but I also loved it. So I also got a couple of books that I wanted my own copies of, like especially because I wanted to write in them. I think that I want to talk about these together. Summer Suns by Lee Mandello and Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. Both of these books were so literary and they used language in such an intricate way. I really wanted to be able to have my own thoughts on the pages and to continue to engage with both these stories. Summer Suns is more on the haunted by grief side of horror. It's a Southern Gothic, it's got a little dark academia, but it is about a main character who is a wreck. Like, I truly don't know if I've ever read about someone more disastrously repressed than Andrew Blur. It has some of the most, like, heart-wrenching lines I've ever read in my life, but also every now and then a character would say something so wild, so wildly repressed that, like, I would need to set the book down and take a walk, and I needed to be able to write essays in the margins of this book, and it's actually something I think is really helpful. The margins are, like, huge, but just in the middle. I don't know, like, there's no margin here, but I had a lot of space for my notes. And you know what's crazy is that I had all that room, and still this book is full of post-it notes with the tiniest writing, and I literally bought tinier pens so that I could write annotations in these books. I was like, nah, 0.38 isn't small enough. I need a 0.18. Bloom is more on the cottagecore horror side of things. It's about a woman who meets a vendor at a farmer's market, and the two of them hit it off, have a relationship, but there is something weird and sinister going on, and I'm gonna leave it there. Incredible book to discover. I wrote so many notes in my ebook copy. I'm still working on transferring them over to this. The last book that I reviewed last year that you can check out is The Night of Baba Yaga. This is by Akira Otani, and it was translated by Sam Bett. I'm gonna warn you, there is a lot of violence and a lot of threats of violence towards women specifically. It is in keeping with the setting of the book, but a lot of people have found it overwhelming, I've seen in reviews. So if that's not your thing, that's fine, but it is about a bodyguard who is being forced to work for the Yakuza. So to be honest, like, I liked it, but also this cover is phenomenal, and I just wanted to be able to own this book so that I could have this cover in my collection, because it's great. It's also queer. Everything that I have. Almost everything that I have is queer. Apart from those books, I also did further used book buying, and I wound up with... almost lost all of them. Wound up with this stack. These are all books that I have read this year that, like, I read digitally and wanted physical copies of. First, a cautionary tale about, you know, buying used books online. You don't always know what you're gonna get, and I know that going into it. I've had a lot of wins, and I've had like 1 or 2 misses ever in my life. Squad, unfortunately, was a miss, and let me tell you why. First, this is a great graphic novel. Squad is by Maggie Takuta Hall and Lisa Sturl. This is a paranormal fantasy revenge kind of story. It's very Heathers or Buffy, just very inspired by like 90s and aughts paranormal teen stories. I can get over like writing on spines or sides of pages, but here's my issue. This book is literally damaged. I don't think that this is what you would describe as an acceptable quality book to me. If there are parts of the book missing, that seems like a bigger issue to me. I just have to remember that among my losses, so many wins. That's so many wins. Like, I did get a copy of Camp Prodigy. This is by Caroline Palmer. It's a fairly new release. This is a middle grade graphic novel about a couple of non-binary teens who are going to a music summer camp. It made my heart so warm. It is wonderful. I talked about this and I talked about Squad in the graphic novels episode of Book Lounge. I have one YA contemporary, and that is Not My Problem by Kira Smith. This is absolutely delightful. I think that it is like an essential part of the lesbian YA canon. It's a really, really nice story about friendship and also about someone who desperately needs help and what the circumstances are around her that are making it difficult to ask for help. That it's not just as simple as going to someone for help. There are so many factors in how you wound up needing that help that you just end up drowning in it. If that concept rings true to you, that is definitely something that this book is about, but it's also so funny. I also have 2 adult queer romances. Cleat Cute, this is by Meryl Wilsner, and it is a soccer romance about new soccer teammates. I have exclusively been pitching this book as the Ted Lasso lesbians book. I also really enjoyed Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly. This is set during a cooking competition show where 2 competitors happen to start to fall for one another as the weeks go on, and it made me cry with joy. When I was rereading the scenes that made me cry so that I could add my notes, it made me cry again. And I want to repeat that this is out of happiness. Like, it wasn't even an upsetting scene. I was just so happy. If you are looking for something that's a little more steamy, I would go Cleat Cute. If you're looking for something that's more like heartfelt and about, you know, the build and the reality show of it all, then Love and Other Disasters. Also have a few mysteries down here. We have The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James. This is a dual POV mystery. It is set in 2 different times, 1982 and 2017, and it is about 2 women who are working at the Sundown Motel and the various creepy things that have happened around there and the multiple disappearances that have happened. I don't think Simone St. James needs my help to sell books, but I will add to the hype that I really, really enjoyed this book. It was creepy. I loved both of the main characters, and it made me want to read more of Simone's work. So, I was talking about books that gave me anxiety earlier. You know what? It's even because of it's the same reason. Drowning. This is by TJ Newman. I have all of TJ Newman's books on my TBR. They all sound like anxiety nightmares, but in a way that I really enjoy. In the literal opening sentences of this book, a passenger is looking out the window of their plane and the engine explodes and the plane falls into the ocean below. But the thing is, the plane starts to sink and then it reaches a point where it stops. This book is about getting the plane out from under the sea while they're like losing air and oh, I love the sea, but I also fear her. I wound up also at some point getting a copy of Falling. Falling is a whole other kind of mess. It is about like a whole plane where just before they took off, the pilot was informed that his family had been kidnapped and he needs to ensure everyone on board is dead. So I think that TJ Newman has the potential to just be a really great kind of popcorn fave. Although Drowning, I was so anxious that I was also kind of getting emotional about the like almost, they weren't stock characters. I should give them more credit than that. But when I was getting emotional, I was like, all right, are you crying at the end of Independence Day? The day after tomorrow? It's okay. If you also like movies like that, or Poseidon, I can't think of other rescue movies, Apollo 13, any of those kinds of stories, then I would recommend Drowning, and I'm hoping that I will also really enjoy Falling. Well, I don't enjoy falling, I guess. Prefer standing or choosing to sit. It's so stupid. I have 2 other books that I want to talk about that were audiobooks that I wound up getting like used copies of, and those are Hemlock Island by Kelly Armstrong and The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. Hemlock Island is a more slow burn horror. It is about a group of people who really should not have been put together on an island, and they're on an island, and they don't even have the time or ability to deal with the trauma that exists between all of them, because it becomes very clear that someone is on the island with them. This unsettled me so much at so many different moments, but I also think that this is great for being a deeply emotional horror story. It was a completely random pick from my library. I just happened to find an horror audiobook that was available, clicked play, found out like 5 minutes in that the main character was bisexual. Some reviews call this book melodramatic. If that is the case, then I live for melodrama. And I don't think that's the case. I think I enjoy emotional horror, but maybe I'm wrong. The Weight of Blood, on the other hand, is a YA retelling of Carrie by Stephen King. Actually. Carrie by Stephen King. I also bought this copy of Carrie. I read Carrie, I think back in high school. It's it's been a long, long time, but it was one of the very first Stephen King books I ever read, and I've always had like a fondness for it. And after reading The Weight of Blood, I wanted to be able to have both. I think especially because The Weight of Blood does actually incredible work as a retelling. The story of Carrie as one of like small town racism, of internalized racism, it completely recontextualizes the story of Carrie. It makes so much of it like more heartbreaking, but it's such an incredible way to reinvent this story and to put new perspectives to it, and in a way that like I'll never be able to look at Carrie the same way again. And I think that that's such a compliment to the writing, to the story of The Weight of Blood. But also the other thing that's absolutely amazing about this book is the audiobook. If you're an audiobook listener, definitely check out the audiobook for this one. It has a full cast narration. It gets like the small town drama of it all, like everybody gossiping about one another. It's so cool to hear it in all the different voices. Like it just, I don't know, it works. It's a good ass book. Carrie's good too. I like Carrie. I love books and stories that are in conversation with one another the most. Like that's one of my special interests. It's a related theme to what I wrote my thesis about in college, because I am fascinated by the way that stories inspire one another and creators inspire one another. So these are great. A little precarious over here. It's fine. I do actually have 2 more books that I read this year that I got copies of, but these are both new releases. I wound up buying both of these books from Cheris Books, which is a bookstore in Georgia. They're very different sides of the spectrum in terms of story, but they're like the 2 sides of my reading. So those are Listen to Your Sister by Nina Viel and Gay the Pray Away by Natalie Nadwas. Listen to Your Sister is a horror debut. I have been calling it like the eldest sister trauma horror novel. I think that this book does a really great job of being the horror story that people seem to kind of be getting bored with now, of like emotional ghosts, grief as a ghost, trauma as a ghost. It takes all those ideas and works with them, but this is also like such a genuinely funny book. I think it is phenomenal. And then way back at the beginning of the year, the very first audiobook that I listened to this year, Gay the Pray Away. This is a YA contemporary about a girl named Valerie who is, over the course of this book, realizing that she is bisexual and that the homeschool community that she has been raised as a part of is actually a cult. I think that it is 100% a love letter to librarians and to small acts of allyship and resistance and how much impact those small acts can have, which is beautiful. Something really cool about this is that the audiobook is actually narrated by the author herself, because she's like a celebrated audiobook narrator. This is just her debut novel. So if you want to hear this story read as the author intended it to be heard, then you should also check out the audiobook. I do have some other new releases. Most of these were sent to me by the publisher, so I don't know as much about them. I haven't read them yet, but let me show you. We have And the Trees Stare Back. This is by Gigi Griffiths. This is YA folk horror set in 1989 Soviet Estonia. Look at the pretty back. Got a whole heap of sci-fi and fantasy here. Notes from a Regicide. This is by Isaac Fellman, and it is a trans family saga set in a distant future. This is also supposed to be kind of a heavy book because our main character is processing the loss of both his parents, and the only way that he has left to connect with his father is to read the prison journals he left behind. Like I said, this is in a somewhat distant future, so there's some kind of speculative element to the story, but it is a story about both of these parents, how they fought for their love, how they came to be, and how their child came to be who they are. It sounds so good. Oddly enough, I have 2 books. Two books that are about, like, being trans and time traveling. The second one is Costumes for Time Travelers. This is by A.R. Capetta. A.R. Capetta is a fave of mine. Their YA mystery, Echo After Echo, is amazing, but also The Brilliant Death is... And there are so many more, too, is the thing. There's not a lot I know about this book other than the fact that it is so short. so short, but it's also about a person who works in a shop where they make costumes for time travelers. I love time travel media, and I always think about how difficult it would be as a time traveler to constantly have period accurate clothing, and I appreciate that someone else is out there worrying about the same thing. But I think this costumer gets dragged into an adventure, like a time travel adventure of their own. Another time book. Skip Shock. This is by Caroline O'Donoghue, and what I know about this book is that it's about a train where time passes differently, like depending on where you are on the train line. If you move north on the train line, then time speeds up. But if you move south along the train line, then time speeds down. And so there are all of these different societies who are living completely different lives because they're living at different speeds. I'm so fascinated by the concept and the world of this one. This was not a publisher gift. I actually bought this one myself, but I have been very, very highly anticipating Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake because it sounds like fantasy Succession, and that's amazing. I would like to read it. It is a little chunky. For me, I know it's not that long. I read mostly novellas. I have a couple more books here that were sent to me by publishers. This one is Get Real, Chloe Torres by Crystal Maldonado. By Crystal Maldonado. This is a YA contemporary. It's a road trip story about a bunch of friends from high school going on a trip, but also everyone kind of has crushy feelings for each other. I think it's a love triangle, but also I think that this might potentially have like a we all kiss kind of scenario at the end, and that's exciting and enticing. Completely separate from that, I also got this story collection, Are You Happy? This is by Laurie Ostland. It has been on my anticipated releases because it is a literary story collection specifically centered on queer stories. Kind of one of my main bags. I really was just curious about it, and then the publisher asked if I would like a copy. And I not going to say no. The next book I want to talk about actually comes with some friends, so get ready for that. I want to talk about Coffee Shop in an Alternate Universe by C.B. Lee. This is also a brand new release, or a relatively new release. It came out over the summer. It has these lovely sprayed purple pages. This is a YA fantasy romance about two girls who are from two different universes, but through some sort of magical happenstance, they meet. Their worlds cross, and it's just at one point this coffee shop. I have been beyond excited about this book because I love C.B. Lee and I have a bunch of their books. I think almost everything they've ever written. So they actually came to Seattle to do a book event and I went. I got this book. I got it signed. There is that, the signature. I also got these. And of course, a Third Place Books bookmark. So I went to this event, I bought this book. I also brought a couple of CB's other books that I hadn't had signed yet. So A Clash of Steel, I have already owned this book for a couple of years, but it was unsigned, so I brought it with me. Here's that. It was so amazing to be able to see CB again and to be able to hold this book in my hands because I feel like I have been hearing about it for years. And I almost left with just this, but then I saw something on a table right before I left. The Lost Story. This is by Meg Schaefer, and the thing is, I had literally just finished listening to this audiobook like a couple of days before, and I fell so in love with this. So I think the paperback is a pretty new release. I needed a copy of it. I am building a stack of books. It's a very specific stack that I'm calling Possibly Magically Traumatized Boys from the Virginias. The Raven Cycle gets to go on that list. Summer Sons is on that list. This is a portal fantasy story that has so much love for fantasy as a genre, and it's an adventure, a quest. We've got an asshole for asshole ship. Ugh, and they're both magically repressed and traumatized. If you also like this very specific subgenre of books, maybe you should check out The Lost Story, but I will say this one is more on the cozy end of all of those books. This does still deal with trauma, characters who have PTSD. There are some like heavier topics, but I would still argue I would describe it closer to cozy. And that is not a word I would use to describe any of my other magically repressed queer boys from the Virginias books. Since we're talking about Queer Boys from the Virginias. I have the new graphic novel, The Raven Boys. This is by Maggie Stiefvater. Of course, the original series. All of them are behind me. This graphic novel version was adapted by Stephanie Williams and illustrated by Sass Millage. I still haven't read this book because I have decided, after seeing a lot of early content and discussions about this adaptation, I've decided I want to reread the original series before I read this. There are just a lot of scenes that have been left on the cutting room floor for this adaptation, and they are scenes that I feel really strongly about, but I would like to make sure I am as acquainted with the story as possible before I jump back in and judge, like, whether those parts of the story should have been taken out or not. You know, by my standards, I guess. And while I was thinking about the fact that I was definitely going to want to reread the series before I jumped into this, I realized that that would be the perfect opportunity to finally finish reading the Dreamer trilogy. I have only ever read Call Down the Hawk, which is the first one. This is the spin-off series for the Raven Cycle. I own a copy of Mr. Impossible, I just haven't read it yet. Years later, the name still gets me, but I did not have a copy of Grey Warren, and this is the conclusion of the Dreamer trilogy. If you enjoyed the Raven Cycle and wanted to read more about Ronan, that's what these books are. Like I said, I knew I was going to want to jump into this trilogy as soon as I reread the Raven Cycle, because I just want everything to be as fresh as possible, and then I'll binge through all of it, and then I might go insane for a month, but then I will probably be normal again. Let's do some horror, some YA horror even. Into the Sublime. This is by Kate A. Borman, and it is on my TBR because it is comped for people who like the horror movie The Descent. This movie? If you like claustrophobic horror and like bloody horror, The Descent is for you. Into the Sublime is about, I think, 4 girls who go into a cave and only one of them comes out, and I believe we are finding out what happened in those caves. But it's a really messed up story and probably very scary. I also have Even If We Break. This is by Marika Nijkamp and is more on the thriller end of like the thriller horror spectrum. This is one of those books where everyone is in one location and they start getting killed off one by one, and you can't trust anybody and who's doing the killing and that kind of storyline. This has a terrible average rating on Goodreads. I just wanted to be honest about that, and I do have some concerns given that rating, but I'm also really curious, and I've never read anything by Marika Nijkamp before. They're a pretty big name in YA, so we'll see. Look at the cool masks. I like them. I also have Delicious Monsters. This is by Lizelle Sambury. It looks like a haunted house story and a main character who has the ability to see dead people moving into a haunted house. It's a chunky book. How many times have I said that in this video? I'm like 90% sure that I bought this when I was planning my books that are recommended for fans of Haunting of Hill House vlog. I don't know if that vlog will ever happen, but now I own this if I do decide to do the vlog. We've also got The Dead House by Dawn Kurtagich. Is it Kurtagich or Dirt? I have actually read this book before. My ex-girlfriend in college, I read her copy of this book and really, really liked it. And I have been curious about getting my own copy because I want to be able to loan this out to people in my life who I think will enjoy it. I will say there are possibly some depictions of mental illness in this book that are not at the standard of where I usually like my books as an adult reader today. So maybe this is like a revisit that's going to change my mind. But this was such an engaging book when I read it. It is a multimedia book. That's the other reason I wanted a physical copy, because this is a case file. So we are flipping through like the file of what happened, interviews, transcriptions from video files, and all we know is that I think a school? Yeah, a school burned down and a couple of people died. and we are getting the story of what happened there. Another fantasy horror, House of Hollow. This is by Crystal Sutherland. I say this is horror fantasy. I think that that's more on the side it falls on. I think this is supposed to be like a dark fairy tale kind of energy. So this is about, I think, a group of sisters who went missing for like a month when they were kids. And when they came back, they had no memory of what had happened in that time. And now we're 10 years on. And then one of the sisters goes missing again. I think that this cover is gorgeous. That's the other thing. The way that the flowers grow across her face is so pretty. And speaking of beautiful, I also got a copy of The Spirit Bares Its Teeth by Andrew Joseph White. Look at the sprayed edges on this book. This is set in 1883, London, 1883, and it is about a trans boy who is being put into a, like, forced marriage. He's also, like, a medium. He communes with the spirits, and then after he, attempts to escape that arranged marriage, he is diagnosed with something called veil sickness, which is something that only overtakes, like, hysterical women, and he's sent away to a psychiatric facility. This is going to be a very dark book, I know that, but Andrew Joseph White is an incredible author. The way that he writes, like, trans guys dealing with bodily autonomy and that bodily autonomy being taken away from them is visceral, it is very heavy, but I love it. And also, Hell Followed With Us has one of my favorite depictions of an autistic character that I've ever read, like one of the most relatable depictions of autism that I have ever read, and that was a side character. The main character of this book is autistic, and I would like some more of that special sauce when it comes to Andrew Joseph White and writing about queer neurodiversity and fighting against monsters, whether that monster is humanity or a scary beastie or a ghost. Another short story collection, I have His Hideous Heart. This is edited by Dahlia Adler. It is a bunch of YA authors who are all retelling classic Edgar Allan Poe short stories. Something that I think is really cool is that this edition includes the original tales. So I don't think I actually own any Edgar Allan Poe, but I grew up reading a lot of it. My mom read a lot of Edgar Allan Poe to me. It was one of our October activities, as we would read stories and novels and novellas from our big Edgar Allan Poe compendium. So I love that these are retellings that also include the originals, because there are a lot that I would like to revisit. I bought this right around the time I was revisiting The Fall of the House of Usher, the Netflix series, which is phenomenal if you are an Edgar Allan Poe fan. It is a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher, but it is an homage. It is a love letter to all things Poe. So I had just rewatched that, and I was like, isn't there that YA anthology that's all the retellings? So I got it. There are a bunch of authors on here that I have read and a bunch that I haven't. Some authors that I've already talked about in today's video. Marika Nijkamp is in here. Tiffany D. Jackson is in here. I think this is going to be creepy and fabulous, and I always like finding new authors that I can go after with just like a taste of their writing style. Also, if you love The Fall of the House of Usher on Netflix, then maybe you are a fan of Mike Flanagan in general, and you have also watched the masterpiece that is Midnight Mass. If you haven't, do. If you have any form of religious trauma, watch with care. But I have this book, Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi, on my TBR because it is comped for fans of Midnight Mass. Actually, I think somewhere it was described as like Lord of the Flies meets The Exorcist by way of Midnight Mass. Some combination of those terms, and that's designed for me. This is historical horror set at St. Vincent's Orphanage for Boys. One night, a bunch of strangers wander in, and one of them is looking really rough, and he has a bunch of occult symbols carved into his body. So things get pretty serious after that. I have been waiting for it to get just a little bit cooler so that I can enjoy this, because I want it to be winter, and then it will be perfect. Then it will be perfect. I also have an adult thriller. This is Real Easy by Marie. by Marie Rutkowski. I was interested in this book because Marie Rutkowski is mostly well known, I think, for YA fantasy. This was her debut into writing adult thrillers. So it's kind of like, there was some buzz when this was released, but it was a few years ago. Buzz kind of went away. I know this is set in the 90s. I know it is about, I think, a series of disappearances or maybe murders that are happening to dancers at a strip club. I'm always curious when an author makes like a really extreme genre or age group jump. And I think Marie Rutkowski was a little ahead of the curve because a whole lot of YA fantasy authors have since gone the way of writing adult thrillers, but she was on it. She was ready. I have this little stack that kind of goes together. Basically, if you've ever heard of Value Village, it's like a Goodwill. It's a used merchandise clothes store. They have this deal all the time whenever you go in. If you buy 4 books, you get the 5th one free. So I usually end up with a bunch of books that I'm like kind of curious about in, the attempt to reach that 5-book limit. They got me. The book that I originally saw at Value Village that I wanted to buy was No Exit by Taylor Adams, because at the time I had this book on hold at the library and the hold was like months out. I was never going to read the book. And what's really funny is that I bought this and then I didn't read it. So I could have just waited for the hold. This is a story about a girl, I think a college student. She's driving through the Rocky Mountains and there is a bad snowstorm. She has to stop at a rest stop and she's there with a bunch of strangers. And then when she goes out to check her car, she finds that there is a little girl like in the trunk of a car. And now she has to try to figure out which one of the people she's trapped with at this rest stop kidnapped a little girl. I saw it at the Value Village and I was like, I can just save all my time. And then I didn't save any of my time, but I do own this. So the books that I got with that, we have mostly YA contemporaries. Watch Us Rise. This is by Renee Watson and Ellen Hagen. Renee Watson is one of my favorite authors. I'm guessing this is going to be a very girl positive, feminism forward YA contemporary. I also got It Goes Like This. This is by Miel Moreland, and this is about a queer group of friends in high school. I don't know if it's just like a coming of age story. No, you know what? Are they in a band? They might be in a band. After a sudden falling out leads to the disillusion of the teens band. Oh, the disillusion of the teens band, their friendship, and Ava and Celeste's starry-eyed romance. Oh no. I think people know I have a soft spot for stories about music. I love like books about bands and getting the band back together. Plus this is super queer, so it was going to end up on my shelves at some point probably. And the last YA contemporary that I have is Fake Dates and Mooncakes. This is by Shirley. This is a fake dating foodie romance. And that's all I need to know. Look at the corgi. The last book that I got at Value Village, I was going through the shelves and I was like, I need one more. I need my free book. And then I found a book. I was so excited because it was going to give me this opportunity to read this classic. Thrilling. I got home. I went to add it to my Goodreads shelf, which is when I found out I already read this book and I have no memory of it. So Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk. I think I probably read this like one of my summers between college or high school. Apparently I didn't like it, but I have been revisiting a lot of media that I didn't really like in high school and college through like a new lens, through the fact that I watch a lot more movies and read a lot more books now. And it's been giving me a lot of new perspectives on stories that I previously hadn't engaged with that well. So I am still curious to reread Fight Club and see if it works for me better now than it apparently did then. But yeah, I did do the thing. I did do the thing where I bought a book and was like, oh, I've fully already read that and just didn't even remember anymore. We also have A Lady for a Duke. This is by Alexis Hall and is a Regency romance with a trans woman main character. I believe it's that the main character she's presumed dead at Waterloo. So she's in the military fighting and presumed dead, and she uses that opportunity to escape from her life and be able to transition. And the only thing that she's sad about is that she left behind her, like, best friend. And it turns out that her best friend has been absolutely devastated by her presumed death. But now there is a new potential opportunity for reconnection and maybe even for romance. That sounds so amazing to me. I can't tell you. Something else that sounds amazing to me and has sounded amazing since I first heard about it, Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This is cozy queer fantasy. I think this is one of the ones that really started the cozy fantasy trend going. This is about a battle-weary orc who is retiring from fighting to run a coffee shop. Delightful. Any book in the world that puts muscled women on the cover has my loyalty, passion, life in their hands, I guess. She's so strong. She's so buff. Why aren't there more buff women on the covers of books? It makes me... We could have these buff muscle mommies on so many books. I have another graphic novel. I forgot about these ones down here. Molgoth. Blah, that sounded weird. Molgoth by Kate Leth. Early aughts, goth girl, mall culture. This is a coming-of-age story, and I have wanted to read it because I really love Kate Leth. I love Kate's art and style, and they are one of the authors of Spell on Wheels, this series. Also, oh no, what is it? Hellcat? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did Hellcat. I have 2 books down here that I also bought because I have already read them and I wanted my own copies of them. The sticker hell of this copy of Lumberjanes. So this is Lumberjanes Volume 1. This is a adorable, fantastically loving fantasy comic series about a group of friends at a girls' summer camp, all of the crazy fantastical adventures they go on. I used to talk about Lumberjanes on this channel so nonstop, it was getting a little ridiculous. I have just never had my own copies of these stories, and like I said, it's kind of important to me to be able to surround myself with stories that I love, that I'm passionate about. I am sad I have to take so many stickers off this. Why is it in the bargain bin? It's wonderful, it's loving, it makes me believe in friendship and magic. The other book that I found in here that is one I've already read before is This Is How You Lose the Time War. This is by Amal El-Matar and Max Gladstone. It's one of my favorite books of all time. It is an enemies to lovers, like Romeo and Juliet time travel romance masterpiece. It is told exclusively through letters between 2 time agents on opposing sides of this sprawling time war, and this is one of the most, like, poetically written, beautiful books ever. I have an advanced release copy of this book, which is fine, I love it, but advanced release copies are not finalized on the language. There are a lot of quotes that aren't the same, things that get changed in final editing. And this is a book that is so carefully written and so beautiful when it comes to the intricacies of all of the little words that I wanted the actual finalized words. Y'all, I have one tiny little stack left, and then we have gotten through everything. So stick with me. I recently went on a trip to San Francisco. It was the first time I have ever been to San Francisco. It was amazing. I got to go to celebrate my sister's birthday and my mom's birthday. One of the things that I did before we went to San Francisco is I marked a bunch of bookstores that I was just potentially interested in, and whenever we had kind of a lull where we weren't sure what we wanted to do, I would open up my map and just see if there was a bookstore nearby. So we wound up going to 2 independent bookstores, buying some books at each one, and I'm going to tell you about them. City Lights Booksellers is I think it's in Chinatown. If it's not, it's like just outside. They have an incredible selection. It turns out that they actually even have their own very small publishing division, but one of the things they specialize in is LGBTQ nonfiction. So both of the books that I got were queer nonfiction. So the first book that I have is Bad Gays. This is by Hugh Lemmy and Ben Miller. This is like, maybe a pop history book if I had to describe it as something, but this is about queer people in history that were not good people, like criminals. The point of this collection is, like, it's also important to remember queer life regardless of how well that queer life was led. Like, there have been a variety of people whose sexuality has been explicitly erased because people didn't want you to know that those people were also queer. If you're curious, these are the people that Bad Gaze talks about. The next book that I want to talk about, I'm going to have to talk about in a particular way to make sure that this video, it doesn't get taken down. But this is like an important and revolutionary piece of writing, so I still want to talk about the book. This is the Societally Acceptable Gays and Their Friends Between Revolutions. This is part utopian fiction, part manifesto. Part of what annoys me about not being able to use the words on the cover of this book is that it is a highly politicized use of this word. Like, when we talk about reclaiming slurs, this is the exact kind of thing that we are talking about. This is like the queer history that we have to aspire to. This is a text that is about revolution, about fighting back, and about revolutionary self-love in the face of systemic hate. I have really wanted to read this book. I believe it was released in 1977, and it's just a classic enough that I wanted it to be able to be in my actual collection, because having a collection of queer classics is also really important to me. As a queer reader, as a lesbian interested in history, and our history in particular, I wanted this. Random fun thing about City Lights, they have like a whole section in the back of the bookstore where they're like, hey, these are the books that we personally have published. And I was looking at this shelf of books, and all of a sudden I see a book that I know. So, fun fact, if you were here when I talked about the Gilda stories, this is by Jewel Gomez and is also a queer classic. This is about Black lesbian vampires across time, but was released in the 1990s, and it is a City Lights book. I just thought that was nifty. Like, there were no other books on the wall itself that I recognized, but I know the Gilda stories, and I had no idea that it was published by this bookstore that I happened to have the opportunity to visit. And the last three books that I'm going to talk about are all novellas, because the bookstore that I went to actually specializes in, I believe, sci-fi, fantasy, and horror. Borderlands books. It was amazing. I could have spent so much money there. It would have been ridiculous. I was trying to be restrictive, and I wound up being restrictive by limiting myself to novellas, and I wound up bringing 3 of them home. These really run a range in terms of how much I know about them. Your Mind is a Terrible Thing by Haley Piper, I have wanted to read. This is sci-fi horror set on board like a spaceship when like an alien invades. Just very alien inspired, very my thing. I have had so many of Haley Piper's books on my TBR, but this one sounds perfect for me. The next one that I got was Sterling City. This is by Stephen Graham Jones. This is like the tiniest little book, like baby, and this is a story set in rural Texas after a Martian moon is destroyed. I have no idea. I have no idea what this book is going to be like, but it was worth it because it was like based purely on author. I'm willing to read anything Stephen Graham Jones writes, and I loved the opportunity to find something I had never heard of before. And the last book that I got at Borderlands was purely a cover buy. I only bought this because I grabbed the book, saw the cover, and needed it. And that is Chopping Spree. This is by Angela Sylvain. Look at this book. It's so 80s horror. I love it. This is set at a mall, and it's a slasher, which is all I need to know. I'm pretty sure the main character is queer because I have like a magnetic ability. I just close my eyes in a bookstore and reach out, and somehow the gay books come to me. Borderlands was so great. I'm so glad that I got these. Like I said, I could have gotten so many more. Their selection of novellas was incredible. Friends, that is it. Those are all of the books that I have acquired in 2025 across these many months. I hope you found a couple new books that you'd never heard of to add to your TBR or that you can hopefully check out. If you want to hear more about any of these titles, please be sure to let me know down in the comments below. Ask away. I can tell you more about bookstores where I got them, ways that you can support independent bookstores. If you want more information about Book Lounge or how you can listen to new episodes, I can tell you all about all of those things. I would love to hear what all of you are planning on reading as we head into the end of 2025. Like, are some of you preparing winter stories? Are some of you preparing summer stories? Depending on the hemisphere that you are in. I know that I am settling myself in to start reading a whole lot of stories set in the snow. Regardless of whether or not Washington actually gets snow, I want snowy stories. What about all of y'all? Let me know. Other than that, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in another one very soon. Bye!